Hey, very good evening. Saturday night, this is Clash the Titans. You're with me, Jeremy Kyle. I'm joined by the one and only Julia Hartley-Brewer. It says here, Mike Graham, of course, and the legend that isn't, Kev O'Sullivan. What a week it's been. The NHS, surprisingly in chaos. Starmer racking up air miles whilst Britain's problems continue to pile up. Syria's spiralling, leaving the world on edge. But it's great news for Nige as reform gets a billionaire-sized boost. Can you just bleedily roll the titles, please? So how are we all feeling tonight? Fit and well, I hope, because this show accidentally might end up raising your blood pressure. If you keel over, for God's sakes, don't expect to get an ambulance to come to your rescue. You've got about as much chance of one turning up at your house as Rachel Reeves giving the farmers a tax cut for Christmas. Hospitals have been told to hit targets to cut A&E delays. Now, the new Health Secretary Wes Streeting says the NHS should forget them and concentrate on patient safety. Yeah, right. We haven't seen this much confusion. I love this. Somebody wrote this. Since Premier League referee David Coote got his white lines crossed. Did you get good that?
He's here all week.
Thanks. And whilst the NHS is flatlining into a winter crisis, where's our bloody Prime Minister on yet another foreign tour? This time with the very same Saudi princes who used to attack the Tories for meeting. With his usual, I like this as well, reverse Midas touch, the PM landed in the Middle East at the exact moment that Syria exploded into chaos. And now, some of the thousands of ex-Islamic State terrorists busted out of prison might just be headed for Britain. It just gets worse and worse for Starmer, because there was more news. Farage is a happy man. He's taken candy from the Tories. Billionaire Nick Candy and his pledge to raise 40 million quid for reform. Elon Musk as well. Nige is feeling very, very happy. So, gang, a busy week. You said to me, why are you talking about the NHS? I'll tell you exactly why I was talking about the NHS, which I know we moan about a lot, and we hear about targets and we hear about streeting, the latest in the line of health ministers who's saying, you know, forget that, it's about patient safety. I think on Tuesday, I took more calls, more sad, emotional calls about this ambulance service story from the West Midlands. Basically, they came out and said that it's so bad for them now that if you've had a stroke or a heart attack, and we just waited for a stroke and a heart attack, you should drive yourself to hospital. I just want to say, because my old girl had a stroke and the ambulance came within 6 minutes, and there's a drug that they give that can sort out the blood wherever it's burst in your brain, etc. And she got that. We are now saying as a country, we are so screwed with our health service. And I'd like to point out, I feel really, really sorry for the paramedics, and I feel massively sorry for the people in those towers that have to go, oh, let's leave the 87-year-old on the floor who's broken a leg. Let's leave the 13-year-old who's been knocked off his bike. What a terrible position. And I have a really strong view on this, which nobody else shares, which is, you know, the health service was a great invention, and the ambulance service is part of that. It isn't fit for purpose, and perhaps one of the things we could do, instead of having a debate about how it should be more money or less diverse jobs, why don't we stop giving the health service and the benefit system to people who've never paid into it? Start with that.
That's not going to solve it all.
This isn't new,
no,
is
but
it?
it's
The thing is, though, this
it happens
new.
every. I mean, how do you know
this
it's
has been going
winter?
on for years,
Right?
years.
It's winter, so
I've never taken more calls though from people saying.
Yeah, well, I remember it blew up about a year ago. Same thing. We are.
It blows up every year.
We're now immune to this, as Mike says. We are now.
Are we?
Yes, we are.
What if your wife has a heart
to you.
attack or a stroke? You think that's acceptable?
We are no longer
drive her?
shocked by it, are we? Because
But we should be.
Because it has been going on for years.
Yeah.
A friend of ours, Tim and Wendy, I'll say who it was. Wendy had a heart attack 2 years ago. Tim's on the phone desperately, 999. They said, you better drive her in this yourself. This was after about 20 minutes. He gets in his car. He charges across London to the Royal Free Hospital, dragged in. Somebody tried to have a go at him for parking his car right outside the door.
Yeah.
He dragged his wife in, and the doctor
Didn't they have a go at him for not wearing a mask?
not wearing a mask and parking outside. The doctor said another 10 minutes and your wife would have been dead. So in other words, if they didn't have a car and they had to wait for an ambulance, dead wife.
I think what it was, and then shut up. But this woman rang. She was 62, and her husband. She put his tea on the table, went into the kitchen, came back, and he was having a heart attack. She phoned an ambulance because she wasn't experienced in CPR. She gave him CPR for 56 minutes, right? Couldn't get an ambulance. He died in her arms, and then the ambulance service turned up. And she said, quite honestly to me, he's worked for 40 years in this country and has never asked for anything. It's the least we should expect.
But it's just so, again, in these emergencies, I remember, my mum had a heart attack back in 2019, but she's a retired GP. She realised she was having a heart attack while she was on a bus. So could you stop here, got out of the bus, got into a taxi and said, hospital, please, I'm having a heart attack.
That's brilliant.
Which is kind of tells you...
Can we have your mum's number in case you need a doctor?
A relative of mine a few years ago, a bike accident, he's 6'5", he's a big lad, he's broken his pelvis, right? He's in, which is as agonising. Couldn't get an ambulance. A local passerby ran down to a hospital that was 10 minutes away, literally ran there, begged the ambulance men to actually, would you please, we can't get an ambulance. They said it'll be 6 hours minimum. Can you please just come and help? And they basically wink, wink, nod, wink. They went, they picked this relative of mine up, they took him to hospital and then just drove away. And do you know what the hospital's concern was? Oh, by the way, my relative is spending 24 hours with a broken pelvis lying on a hospital trolley in a corridor, by the way. But you know the concern of the hospital? Can you identify these ambulance drivers? Because we want to discipline them.
Unbelievable. Well, that's the other thing. I mean, if you take a taxi to the hospital, it's fine. But if you try and park anywhere near a hospital...
What if you can't afford a taxi?
Well, no, but what I'm saying is if you do actually drive to a hospital and then you have to find a parking spot either in one of their extortionate parking car park
takes you 5 hours to fill out
you've got to fill out the thing. I mean, it's ridiculous.
You said that wouldn't solve it. I just have a real problem that all of our public services are being stretched to the limit. I know we talk about money. They're also being stretched to the limit because of the numbers of people that come into this country and haven't paid jack into a system that is supposed to benefit all of us. I think it's appalling.
West Streeting, right? The latest health secretary who will not reform the NHS.
No.
He's talking a good game. Not once mentioning the 3,500 middle-ranking executives that earn more than
manning essential computers,
Not once mentioning the £40 million a year they spend on 800 diversity officers. This is what needs to be sorted out. Stop all that nonsense. Divert the money into the ambulance service and frontline medical services. We'd be getting somewhere. He's not even mentioning
And they're really not. I mean, paramedics have one of the toughest jobs. I mean, they just get treated poorly. They're dealing with the drugs. People are severely mentally ill. All
they
the violence.
Get attacked sometimes.
They get attacked. It's a very low paid, very, very difficult job. But the thing I find frustrating is that they say they're going to reform the NHS. And I've got a lot of time for West Streeting. He's literally saying some of the right things. Whether or not they're going to be able to do it. My thing is that if you've still got Amanda Pritchard, who is a complete sort of, worked her way up for 20 years or whatever it is to be at the top of the NHS, if you think that woman is going to be helping to reform the NHS. She's an absolute... She's like one of those classical civil servants. She's been paper pushing all her life. She is part of the problem, not part of the solution. But we cannot have a situation where we go from... We used to go from winter crisis to winter crisis, but we'd have a few months in between. Now we go winter crisis to spring crisis, to summer crisis, to autumn crisis.
The complete crisis.
And as Kevin said, it's not even really that newsworthy anymore.
What about that guy?
The trouble is, it's all basically... the problem is the flow, isn't it? Because they've got people in ambulances waiting outside hospitals who can't get into the hospital. There's people in the bed, so you can't get out of the hospital, even though they could get out.
I've got a theory.
There's somewhere to go. Surely that's not that hard to fix. It can't be.
I wrote this a long time ago. I did a show once with the ambulance service in the West Midlands, and I spent a week with them. And do you know the most shocking and appalling moment?
Apart from some poor soul when an ambulance turns up and Jeremy Kyle's in the back.
Yep.
That'll give you a heart attack.
This middle-aged woman who liked to drink...
Might as well die now.
A middle-aged woman who liked to drink a lot. Camera pans in on Julia Hartley-Brewer at that exact moment.
I'm the only one here with water.
It was the Christmas time. I'd love your take on this, right? And she's absolutely trolled. And we have to go in this ambulance and pick her up from whatever hotel it was in the centre of Birmingham. This is the most abusive, drunk, vomiting woman. She projectile vomits in the ambulance. They get her to hospital. Legally, she has to spend 8 hours in that hospital. So that blocks the bed. They spent 45 minutes clearing that ambulance up before it could get back out and get people with heart attacks and strokes. And I wrote an article saying, I would charge that bloody woman. I would send her a bill for 180 quid.
Some people do get charged. No, but some people do get charged.
Do something.
I've spoken to people who have been in road accidents who have been given a bill. I don't understand how it works because it doesn't seem to happen all the time.
I just think it's a disgrace.
But we have a an extreme left-leaning establishment who still will not hear, but they will not take the fact that the NHS is a complete mess. You had someone on your show this morning, Julia, who was said when you questioned that maybe the NHS wasn't amazing and the envy of the world, he went, "Oh, come on!
Everyone who works in the NHS is brilliant."
We have a government that believes the NHS.
It's not just this government. Every government has put that on a pedestal for the last 15 years or 20 years.
It's not.
It's not fit for purpose, is it? It's not.
Well, everybody knows if it was the best service in the world, somebody else would do it the same way, but nobody else does. There is no copy of the NHS anywhere else in the world.
Sort of.
Every other country in the world, every other country in the world where I go with kids, beds, and you end up in one hospital or another when you're on holiday. You know, when
Cuba.
happened every
It's
single
perfect,
year.
isn't it? Really good.
Every other
Oh,
country
yeah.
is brilliant. You know,
No.
I've been in Mexico, Spain, Portugal,
I'm telling you,
France, every single country, Italy.
You're a health tourist.
Yeah, I am. I mean,
Hey, I'm telling you, the hospital in Barbados in Bridgetown is
Yeah.
better than the NHS.
Yeah.
They need to... But you're right, you can't criticise doctors. They're all doing... Yes, you are, but it's crap. I've got to move on. Michael Graham, what you got?
well, I got Sir Keith Stalin, as I like to call him.
Sir Keith Stalin?
He's been on his travels again, hasn't he? And everywhere he goes, he creates havoc. You
Yes.
know, everywhere he goes. He went to Germany. Shortly after leaving Germany, the government collapsed, right? He went over to America, came back and said, Joe Biden's absolutely great. It's fine. I don't know why he's talking about him not running. 2 days later, he says,
gone.
I'm not running. I'm not doing it. So he goes off to the Middle East and decides he wants to go and hang out in the Gulf with the amazing Mohammed bin Sultan. You know, the man
did that
who,
very well.
Yeah, the man who
like being there.
has been accused of sending a sort of team of killers into Ankara. Into
No,
the
he
Saudi,
did. He hasn't been
into
accused.
the
He did.
Saudi
He's a
embassy.
murderer.
Yeah, into the Saudi embassy. Chopped up Khashoggi, the journalist, and then completely denied he knew anything about it. And by the way, the guys that did the chopping up have also disappeared. They
Have
went
they?
back to Saudi. Nobody
They've
knows what
probably
happened to
been
them.
chopped up
So
as
they've all
well.
gone. So he thought, after having given Boris Johnson a hard time for going to see one dictator after another, he went to see a couple of dictators as well. And of course, as soon as he landed in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, Syria blew up. Right?
Didn't come back, though.
He didn't come back, and he was in the wrong place, basically trying to do a kind of a sales job for the eco-hydrogen business in Newcastle. He took the mayor of the North East with him.
Did he?
Can't remember who it was, Kim somebody or other.
Kim Jong-un?
No, it wasn't Kim Jong-un. Kim Wei-A from...
Kim Wei-A Jong-un.
Hang on. He's selling the eco-hydro business to the biggest oil
To the
state
biggest,
in the world.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And,
That's great, isn't it?
and he's basically there saying he wants investment into Britain. And everybody's going, well, that's all fine. But meanwhile, he left behind Angela Rayner to answer questions about Syria,
That was very
which was one of the
painful to
funniest
watch.
things anybody's ever seen. She had no idea what she was talking about.
How does she get to be Deputy Prime Minister? She was so
Same
out of
reason
her
that John Prescott did.
Well-
they always have to have a pet working-class northerner.
That's
in the
what
Labour
Mike
Party.
says about you on this stage.
But John Prescott at least actually, you know, did make sense when he opened his mouth.
he
And we all loved
No,
him.
he
when-
didn't.
We all
No, he
loved him
did.
when he punched that bloke in the
Yeah,
face.
we did.
John
That was
Prescott
great.
was a moron.
No, he was not a moron. You like
He
calling people
wasn't.
morons. He was actually a very clever guy.
I think John
yeah,
Prescott-
Yeah, he
right.
was. He
I don't
actually
think he was
Anyway,
a moron.
move on.
Met clever
Anyway.
Pat family pets.
Anyway, the point is that Angela Rayner didn't really know what to say. She wasn't really sure whether Assad had been taken out of the game altogether. So the next day they put Pat McFadden out, who's meant to be the kind of enforcer and the proper, deputy prime minister. And then he got it wrong too, because he said, "Oh no, but now we're going to recognise this proscribed terrorist group, the al-Sham, as they're rather amusingly called."
The HTS, they sound like a South Korean boy
I thought it
band.
sounds like a
don't
boy
you?
band.
Sounds like a
I
sexual
think it sounds
condition.
like a train line.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I've got
Right.
HTS.
So,
You probably,
So-
probably have got an
So then
HSTI,
Starmer has to come out and say, no, that's not true. We're not considering listing that. And then David Lammy gets up in House of Commons, and Richard Tice asks him, do you think, like Germany and France and Austria and some other European countries, it might be a good idea to actually, stop asylum claims for people coming in from Syria? And he said, no, absolutely not. We're not talking about that at all. That's not on the cards. 10 minutes later, Yvette Cooper, we're going to do exactly what Richard Tice has just asked if we were going to do. And so the whole
No
the
one
whole
had bothered
government...
to tell David
No,
Lammy.
nobody bothered to tell David Lammy. He's the Foreign Secretary. He's not with the Prime Minister on a foreign trip.
Yeah.
And I just think, Starmer's world tours have got to stop, because everywhere he goes, there's a sort of calamity as soon as he lands.
You would think, wouldn't you, that if you looked at what's going on here and you've just won that majority, you'd want to at least try and pay back the people that elected you. But he doesn't even want to be
he's
here.
deliberately going
Yeah.
abroad now. Of
course he is,
This
Kev.
is
They
his
all
17th trip. The Saudi Arabian trip was a classic for the Foreign Secretary or some other
Yeah.
Cabinet Secretary, not the Prime Minister.
King, that's what he said the King to.
Or
Yeah.
maybe the King. He can't wait to get out of this country, because in this country, not only do we think he's doing a bad job, we have utter contempt for him, and he can feel it. When he goes abroad, he's treated like a world
Yeah.
state.
And it's
The other
red
thing,
carpet.
He loves it,
The other
yeah.
thing, of course, that he didn't do was he missed out being at the real big meeting, which he should have been at, was at the Notre Dame reopening,
Yeah, good
which was a
point. That's where he
fascinating
should have been.
meeting of the minds. You had Prince William there representing Great Britain, who had a very
Who's now
nice,
closer to Trump, as
who's
you said
now
to
had
me
a
last
very
night,
nice
than our
time
Prime Minister
with
is.
Donald Trump. Trump was there, Macron was there, all the sort of players were there, and he was again off on his own in Saudi Arabia,
It's just
meeting
bizarre.
this
Was his
man.
wife with him?
I don't think thought she was.
Well, because she didn't get any free clothes.
She doesn't go anywhere with him.
But here's the key thing. Lots of prime ministers do this. They have this thing where you get into office, you've got all these plans you make these big manifesto commitments and whatever it's what we're on milestones, whatever
Cornerstones, pillars,
we're on this
architectural
targets,
buildings.
But the thing is, fixing house building in this country.
It's hard.
Prisons, criminal justice, the NHS, schools, all immigration, all of those issues. It's hard. It's nitty gritty. It's sitting in a room with a load of other difficult people making difficult decisions. You're upsetting people. It takes years.
A bit like this show, isn't it?
I was going to say a bit like working on this show, isn't it?
It takes absolutely years to show any benefit, and it's hard grift. And prime ministers don't like that when they can just go off, get on a private jet.
He said it.
As you say, they can turn up some of these shit.
Lauded.
And then, but as far as they're concerned, they've done something.
Right.
And they
But you know
seem
what's-
to do
What
something.
about that time he went to Paris? Stood on the back of that truck.
But he went on the back of the truck with Macron.
That was the most ridiculous
The
thing
other
I've
thing
ever
that's
seen.
becoming even more surprising about Starmer is that he's actually not only not very good as a prime minister, he doesn't actually do the detail. I mean, people used to have a go at Boris
We were
Johnson
told that
for
he
not
was
doing.
he
He was
was the
Mr.
details
Forensic.
man, yeah.
He was Mr. Forensic, wasn't
And
he?
he
Everybody
can't do the
kept saying-
communicating. He's
Right.
not likeable. He's not a good communicator.
And he's got the biggest majority in 35 years. What does that tell us?
Every time he speaks, whenever we do the speeches on my show, and he comes off, and I always just do so. I was like,
We're all doing it
I always
now.
go 3, 2, 1, back in
Right,
the room.
yeah.
I mean, it's just it's hypnotically
Well, what about, we haven't even
bad.
mentioned the Christmas tree lights. I mean, I mean, it was just unbelievable. Yeah.
Can't get over it.
I mean, even
has that worked?
our listeners and viewers are now joining in. They're making voice notes where they're impersonating Starmer.
He's a joke, man.
Everyone is
When
ridiculing
they become
the
a
guy.
joke, and to become a joke so soon, if you look about Boris Johnson, who was chaotic, didn't really have a plan, doesn't really believe in anything. I know lots of people, would have voted for him, get Brexit done. But this is a man who really he has no moral or policy backbone at all. He took 2 years to get to this stage. This happened within a couple of months.
But he had a couple of redeeming factors about his personality.
Charming,
he was
funny.
charming, he was funny, he could hold a room, everybody wanted to meet him.
Yeah.
He has a bit of a rock
Oh,
star.
when you see him
But
speaking.
Starmer, I mean, you go into any room that Boris Johnson's in, and everyone's swarming around.
Shame on the British people then, because and shame on the Tories who did such an appalling job that this lot could have been voted in if they'd said nothing. He's an absolute
Julia's
joke.
right,
and
though.
5 months.
When you get to the point where people have gone beyond loading
Contempt.
you and criticising you, and they're laughing at you, as a Prime Minister, you're in big trouble. And the whole nation are obviously appalled. But we're basically laughing at this joke of a Prime Minister. Absolute joke.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
And again, crisis to crisis as well.
Sounds like my life, really. Can I just say how nice you're looking tonight?
Once
don't think you
again,
can do
I have
that, can
dressed as the chair.
Yeah, camouflage.
I'm camouflage.
During this break, I'm
Where
going to
is
sit
she?
on her. Coming up next on Clash of the Titans, Nigel Farage cashes in big. And what does the chaos on Syria mean for Britain? Stay tuned. We're coming back in 3. We're off for a wee. See ya. Welcome back to Clash of the Titans. And next, the main person in the room, Julia Hartley-Brewer, your turn.
The person dressed as
He
a
nearly
chair.
said the main man there, didn't
Yeah.
he? You could tell. He was going to say
Well,
the main man.
But she doesn't mind that.
I've got bigger cojones than
We're
most
just
of you lot.
mere
Come on.
men.
Oh, you had to
Anyway,
bring it
come
down
on.
to balls. I've
That's
only got
always.
one, so cancer's amusing, as is Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thanks very much.
There's only 5
And
in the
he's
room.
off.
There's only 5 balls in this
Over
room.
5 balls, yeah.
4,
Just that
3,
many.
2, 1.
Our balls going to turn on the Christmas lights. Crack on, what you got?
On that note, what are we talking about? Yeah, I want to. You look, you might. You've already touched on this, obviously, with the PM on his trips around the Middle East. But of course, we've been lots of focus this week on what's been going on in Syria.
Yeah.
I'm amazed by the amazing optimism there has been from many about. We're going to basically have a Lib Dem Tory coalition. It's going to be fabulous. It's not.
Really?
We have got an uprising against a hideous, tyrannical, murderous. Genuinely genocidal dictator in Assad, who bizarrely was defended by John Simpson of the BBC,
yes.
of course, who wrote an extraordinary
rather
tweet.
than evil.
Weak rather than evil. He was rather meek when I met him. It's like, and as I messaged back to him, and apparently he was lovely to his mum and made a lovely Victoria sponge as well. Of course, John Simpson's response, instead of to debate, was of course to block me on
course.
air, because that's how they deal with things that beep. But everyone else recognised this man as a genocidal dictator as he was, apart from, of course, the International Criminal Court. International
they're fine
Criminal
with it.
Justice, in the Court of Criminal Justice, because of course they're of course busy while
But he's not Jewish, is he?
Not Jewish, yeah.
I mean, if he was
Exactly.
Jewish,
Exactly,
then he'd be a war
issuing
criminal,
international arrest warrants
Right.
towards Benjamin Netanyahu for after a year of war in Gaza. Apparently, 13 years in Syria doesn't count. But anyway, he's gone. That's a good thing. But as we saw, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, the likes of Assad. When they leave a power vacuum. Now, we've got this new HDS, this group.
Yeah.
They are basically, they're affiliated with Al-Qaeda. We are talking about an Islamist fundamentalist group working with loads of other rebels in this country. I don't see it ending well. But one of the biggest things we've got that's affecting us, because people can say, oh, it's happening on the other side of the world, what's our problem? Well, yeah, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria last time round, it impacted us. Remember last time, 2015? Do you remember that? Millions and millions of people, 7 million people left Syria. Yeah. Many of them arrived in Europe. Tens of thousands of them here in the UK.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. We've got all these jihadists, the ISIS fighters and their brides. Shamima Begum, if you're watching, hello. They're all sitting in these camps in northern Syria. If they are freed, along with all the other prisoners that we've seen freed outside Damascus and the like, what happens to those people? Where do they go? And how many of them end up here? There are at least a dozen British jihadi fighters who left this country, went over there, killed, beheaded, and will want... No, there are hundreds who've already come back. Some of the worst are still there. Right. If they come back, Shamima Begum's lawyer, he reckons that, she's got a better chance now of coming back. We are going to have to live with the consequences of the events in Syria, whether we like it or not.
We don't even know Shamima Begum and the gang in that northern Syrian tent camp. We don't even know if they're still in there. They were guarded by Syrian soldiers. Obviously, they've gone.
Yep.
They've gone back to Civi Street. So we don't even know whether Shamima and her pals are just wandering around the desert right now. So God knows what's going to happen there. What is now going to unfold is a mosaic of chaos. And I would suggest
that... Very flowery language for you.
It's rather good.
A mosaic of chaos.
Where did you get that from?
He's been reading the Times again.
I'm a very articulate man.
You're not at all. He is.
Unusual, that, for him.
A mosaic of chaos.
Yes, it's a sort of flowery language that you could only dream of. But seriously,
it is
going to be chaos. I would say we're going to have the Taliban running Syria.
It's very likely they're going to turn into the Taliban. Yeah. And of course, this guy, the bearded guy, looks. People
that gives him away.
Very similar. Yeah, he's cut the beard a bit. If I were to him, I'd cut it all off completely. I mean, if you really want to make
instead of people's heads, which is what they've been doing in parts of Syria they've been ruling.
But he's trying to convince everybody that he's Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah.
Did you see the interview with Sky?
And I mean,
he's basically the Nick Clegg of former jihadis.
Yeah, the acceptable face of
I agree
jihad.
with Nick.
A moderate jihadi.
You said about Shamima Begum. We had Tom Tugendhat on last night.
The middle of the road murderer.
He said, when I was securities minister, I read stuff that made my blood run cold about her, and she will never come back to this country.
She wasn't some little schoolgirl who was radicalised.
He said as an adult.
She was
he did make
as
that
an
point.
adult, absolutely. But this is the thing, what do we do? Not just her, but all the others. What do we do? Because basically we've got our borders are open. And right now we've got a whole load of people who've claimed to have fled from Syria because of the Assad regime. Well, Assad's gone now, so ta-ra, thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Well, Angela Merkel was the one that was to blame for all of this, because she had at the beginning said to everybody from Syria, just come to Germany and you can come in. So, of course, everybody pretended that they were from Syria. So even all the Syrians who came were not all Syrians. Yeah. But, that was the beginning of the end.
About 40.
That was one of my favourite moments this week when we were talking about migration on one of the shows, and Germany, did you get that? Germany's announced that it might well renounce the ECHR.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be the only bloody country in the world that doesn't wise up as Europe goes right. We're going further to the bleeding left.
2 days ago, Holland, the Netherlands, became the 9th EU country to close its borders. Totally against the Schengen group and all that. So the whole principle of the EU is imploding. It really is.
The reality of this open border policy was supposed to make it nice and easy for tourists and business people to travel between, France and Spain. Well, that's fine, except there's a small matter of millions of people coming from the rest of the world turning up wanting a better life. And you can
wearing suicide vests.
Wearing suicide. But that's it. It's a big look. We've already got the impact of people who are economic migrants who genuinely want to come here to work. And as we know now, and we've been all saying for years, actually most people who come here to work are working in low wage, low skilled jobs. They're bringing their dependents. They're not net contributors.
I think one of them nicked my phone, by the way.
but then you're into the criminality element, and then you're into the jihadi element. And again, I don't know how many times we've to have a situation where someone who's come from abroad, who's been granted right to be here, and we see this across France and Germany as well with their terror attacks, is able to come to this country and be a danger to us. And we are apparently utterly incapable of closing our borders.
I know.
And by the way, but the announcement by Yvette Cooper that all Syrian asylum applications will be suspended and won't let any more Syrians...
That was 10 minutes after Lammy said
yeah,
no,
but it will have absolutely no effect whatsoever. So, are you from Syria? No, I'm not. Oh, well, in you come then.
Yeah, right.
They're going to come across the channel
anyway.
anyway.
With them anyway.
No.
They
Are these
say
the
they're
same
from
people
Syria.
who are lying about being 11 when they're 34
Well, yeah,
and being a man when they're a woman?
Exactly.
It can't be difficult being a border patrol person. You're not 30, you're 11, aren't you?
How do we
You're not a woman, you're a man.
How do we stop Syrians? They're still going to get in the boats. They come to our shores. Yeah. We don't have the habit of not letting them in, do we?
Right,
so
Kevin
that
O'Sullivan,
won't mean anything.
Good man. Topic 4, Clash of the Titans. Over to the man who, as TV Kev, used to call me Jeremy Vile.
I still do, Jeremy.
Let's have another mosaic.
Yeah,
Have a mosaic of intelligence.
in the political mosaic of Britain. No, look.
What's happened to him?
Are you having a stroke? Do we need to call an ambulance?
No, can you get an ambulance, Kev?
No, I've got my car outside.
Hold
I'll
on.
drive.
Have you? Hold on for 14 hours, mate. You'll be all right.
Seriously, something is going on, kids. There is... politics, I think, is changing.
Am I supposed to say, what did you say, Daddy?
I don't know.
Confused
Don't say
at that
daddy.
point.
No, don't say that.
No, something's happening in British politics, and I'm not sure the Tories have recognised it. I know Labour are worried, and we're talking about Reform UK.
Yep.
So more and more people, certainly the population, are moving towards Nigel Farage's party. But in the last 3 weeks alone, we've had Dame Andrea Jenkins, Tory grandee. She's switched sides to
Tory
Reform
grandee.
UK. Well, you know,
Slight
whatever. Give me
overestimation
a break.
Yeah.
Tim Montgomery.
This is a mosaic. Be nice.
Tim Montgomery, really important. He is the heart and soul of the Conservative movement. 33 years, founder of Conservative Hub. He's come to Reform UK, disgusted by the Tories' betrayal.
Come to Reform.
But disgusted by the Tories' betrayal of the people when it came to legal migration, mostly. And now Nick Candy, a billionaire, who's come over, he was a Tory donor. He's immediately given Reform UK £1 million, a 7-figure sum, and they're talking to Elon Musk. Elon Musk will be able to donate to them via his British companies. Yeah. He's promising them $100 million. What is that? 80
Although he says he's not going to give them any money.
But I think, look, the point is, the picture of politics in this country, I think, is changing. I don't think it's outlandish that Nigel Farage thinks he'll win the next election.
Well, he's now the bookies' favourite.
And Kemi Badenoch is looking like a beast.
I want to ask you also. Right,
soon.
Thank you very much indeed, because we were doing this last night, and it's great. They are streets ahead, Reform, and I voted Reform. I've been very honest. They are streets ahead in terms of PR and their approach and the way they do things. But you are absolutely right. Very soon, however many people defect, whether they're grandees or not, we need meat on the bone, don't we, Julie? We need to know how they would deal with the migration crisis.
Reform UK?
We need to know.
We know what they do.
Really?
I was saying the Tories
and
the Tories are
You
going to have
can't
to come up
accuse
with some
Reform UK
policies.
of having no policies about immigration.
No. But we need.
It's their only policy.
We need a bit more. Come on.
Well, no,
we
but
need a bit more.
The fact remains that their policies are a bit like Lib Dem policies.
Yes,
they
are.
don't ever have to practice them, so they don't have to put them into practice, so they can say anything they want.
Yeah,
but I agree with Kevin. I think things are changing, and I think the Brexit vote. The Brexit vote is what changed things. That allegiance people had. Well, my parents always voted Labour, or my parents always voted Tory, whatever it was. Staying with those parties for year and year and year, and now we see that massive, big change in votes. I mean, the fact that you can have a big majority for the Tories in 2019, a big majority for Labour just a few years later. I mean, it just shows how much flux our politics is in, and I think there's every opportunity. The question is whether Nigel Farage, he is such a big figure. He's the person who can immediately boost their polls. But does he have a ceiling in terms of his appeal? Like we all know him personally. We all love him. He's a great character. But there'll be a lot of people who go, no, not Nigel Farage. Is there someone else can take it on? But we know that money talks in elections. Yeah. One of the reasons why people always say the Tories will always trounce reform on the right, the centre right of this country, is because they've got you've got those offices, you've got those long-term donors, you've got the campaign organisation. If the Reform Party can get that sort of funding they need and the enthusiasm to get people together to do that, that's a game changer.
Kev, 1 second. I want to ask you this: do you think under the present political system, because we talk about this the whole time, the two-party system, whether it's money or policies or whether it's the vibe for Farage that we all feel, Can he smash that system? Can
Well,
he?
I believe he can, and I think that Westminster bubble boys and girls are not recognised,
They're
particularly
always
the
wrong.
Tories. And the Reform UK Party, hitherto, has basically been three men and a dog. The Reform UK Party, with money and organisation and personnel, with Farage at the top, I think there'll be a tour de force.
And you can already see, actually, in terms of the mainstream media, how they're covering, having to mention sort of, a question from an MP in Parliament. They're already sort of putting, the tougher questions. Yeah. They're putting the minister of questions. They're getting information out. They're being taken more seriously. They're doing that. By the way, also, those MPs are also doing the job. All this stuff. Nigel Farage is off in America. Keir Starmer's in Bahrain. I mean, Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, they are in their constituency.
They're working hard.
Every week.
Those guys are working.
No,
they're working.
Well, no,
they're
working. They're working really hard. And also the thing is, they're punching way above their weight. For five
Making
MPs,
a lot of noise.
they're making an awful lot of noise. They're asking all the right questions. People are very happy with what they're doing.
Yeah, when do we hear from the Green Party? They've got
the key will be whether they can find enough properly good candidates, I think. But they've got time because
and they've got to vet them better. They've got
to where they are.
Literally with money.
But they managed to get to where they are now in the House with five MPs with just about 2 months.
Nobody would love it.
Not very much. But they've got years now.
Nigel Farage's role, whether it was with UKIP or whether it was the Brexit Party, has always been to basically almost acting as a little tugboat, sort of pushing the ocean liner and pushing the Tory party into policies like offering an EU referendum, actually delivering on policy that referendum, and then you're delivering Brexit and pushing. And if it wasn't for those votes for UKIP and the Brexit Party with Nigel Farage, we wouldn't have seen any of that. But the question is, Nigel Farage, what he said differently now is that, and before the last election, we're not going to be the all-around. So our job is no longer to sway a little bit.
Will they combine with the Tories?
It's our job to replace the Tories.
I think the Tories might have to go cap in hand.
I agree with that. Yeah.
The people of this country are absolutely disgusted with the Tories for their betrayal over immigration.
And it won't go that.
Kelly Badenoch looks like a beached whale at PMQs because she keeps trying to sort of tackle Starmer on the migrant crisis, and he just turns around and says, well, it's your lot's fault, and everybody knows that's true.
She's not been, we've got 30 seconds, she hasn't come out of the traps, has she?
She ain't going to do it. She's not going to cheat.
I wonder whether Cleverly and all that lot and Tom Tugan are sitting waiting for her to go in a couple of years.
I don't think they could have done it either. I think there's definitely,
No job.
I think she's capable of being better. I think she's capable of being better, and I wonder whether she's being badly advised. Because I think she's cleverer than she is.
Lady and gentlemen, and all 5 testicles around this table, thank you very much indeed. That's all from Clash the Times. Big thank you to Julia Hartley-Brewer, who came dressed as a chair, Mike Graham, who is, of course, a god, and Kevin O'Sullivan, who...
Mosaic boy.
Intelligence. You can catch us all next week on Talk, of course. Tune in, radio, online, and your smart speaker, and you can subscribe. But most of all, have a lovely week. Thanks for watching. Say bye-bye, Julia.
Bye-bye.
Say goodbye, Kevin.
Bye-bye.
Say goodbye, Mike.
Bye.
Children's show. Bye-bye.